tiny flower breaks the stone, her roots connected far below. She drinks the power of the sun, a testament to anyone who's taken on what seems to be immovable, with faith to launch 1,000 stars, to ride a comet straight to Mars, when all oppose refuse to see, and say that it will never be. Collective mind and one belief, impossible. The quiet way unseen by eyes, who seek to shine a neon light. The gentle, strong, insistent flow of one who says they do not know, but understand and show in ways remarkable. I wish to swing out of the sea, to land inside this landscape me, a solitude of still ripples, and quiet concert there compose, not for applause and not for need of anything. If I could see all that you see, a love that knows not fear, the world could fall, and through it all, a love song I would hear, a love song I would hear.
Good morning. Good morning, Sister Belinda, Sister Fatima. Good morning to everyone.
Sister
Good
Usha.
morning, Sister Usha.
So today we have a beautiful power to explore. And in fact, I'm just remembering something connected to the color orange. Somebody wrote this book called Orange Socks. And actually it's all about courage. So the power to face is really about courage. And let's see how we can actually unpack this power, and how and what can we do to make it something that can actually help us as a tool to work through the things that happens in life.
Would you like to start us off, Sister Usha?
Okay. So for me, very much the power to face, which is really what we're working with. And obviously, courage is connected to this power. And most of the time, if you think about it, and I think I'd like to start off with a beautiful story that I always paraphrase because it's easier that way. But it's a story of David and Goliath. And in that story, what we see is that the country is facing this huge monster that needs to be killed and destroyed. And all because this Goliath is a very tall someone, they actually created or gave opportunities for powerful armies, powerful individuals to go and kill him or combat him. And what was happening is that David, who was physically a very small person, even in terms of his family, was the smallest. So he never was actually given permission to go to fight and go at war. And but he had this feeling that, even though he was small and maybe didn't have the strength. In fact, when he went to the king to say to the king, I can go and kill the Goliath. And the king said to him, okay, to get there, at least wear my armament because we want to protect you. And so when the king put the armament onto David, David actually sank down because that armament was so huge. And so it was like everybody was discouraging David, but David still felt that he could actually conquer the Goliath. And so in any case, we know that David goes onto the battlefield and he uses his sling and he shoots the Goliath and he falls down. And the story is very powerful because what happens is that on an external, there was nothing that anybody could be convinced that David actually had the power to destroy such a huge demon. But on the other hand, David was actually spending daily, he used to use his sling, and from a distance, he had to actually chase away lions, wolves, because he was actually the shepherd looking after the sheep. And so he was so experienced. He had that inner knowing that he didn't need strength, but he actually had the inner way of how to, and it didn't have to be with confrontation. So, and he was so proficient that to kill the Goliath, he didn't actually have to come face to face with the Goliath. And from a distance, he could just shoot his sling. And this, when they analyzed the story of the Goliath actually couldn't see anything more than 5 meters in front of him. So he was actually blind in some way. And so he could only have his power when somebody was in close proximity. But in any case, what I find so amazing about this is that sometimes we try and meet the world by the world's standards, and we actually fall short because, we are absolutely unique beings. We can't measure who we are to another person. And so it's very important to have the courage to know the self uniquely for what I am and minus the opinions of others, and hold that faith so clear, because then it gives me the courage to come across things or overcome things that look sometimes impossible. But because you are not in a limited mindset, you are working from a complete different paradigm, it then actually allows you to see things completely different to other people. And so you can do things that would look impossible to other people. And it takes courage to be different. It takes courage to be one-off, because everybody was against David. And to just finish the story, when David is supposed to become king, everybody was very thinking, yes, we want him to be king. But his brothers and the king himself thought, this is really a small person. What can he do? But Jonathan, who was actually the king's son, he had faith. He said, no, he would support David to become the king. And so for Jonathan, it was, he didn't become the king, but it's remembered that he became the kingmaker. So sometimes when we have to support something, when we have faith in the goodness of it, we can also emerge our own part. And so both these characters actually stepped out of the norm But in turn, both were winners. Because in the big sense of the word, people would say Jonathan lost out because David became king. But it's been remembered that Jonathan became the kingmaker. So can you see, it's just so wonderful to know who you are, not compare yourself to anyone, and you can actually become the best ever. And that's how we make a contribution to the world, not to be afraid of being the self. Sister Fatima, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Sorry, I forgot. I got so involved in what you were saying. But I was saying that as I was listening to you, the word courage keeps coming up. And I felt that courage is central to the power to face.
Mm.
And just very, very quickly to say that if you look at courage, courage is the energy that fuels our ability to pursue our dreams. And when you have courage, you also have faith, because David wouldn't have done what he did if he didn't have the faith that he would actually overcome Goliath. He needed that faith. But then that faith is also accompanied by other virtues like enthusiasm, in the ability to be able to do something. So as you were busy mentioning the word courage to me became central to the power to face, because it contains that energy that gives you the ability to take that step against all odds.
Mm.
Yeah, very, very much in agreement with both of you about this energy of courage. You know, in the map of consciousness, as drawn up by David Hawkins, he says that it is the point of courage in which one can move from all the lower states of consciousness like anger and guilt and worry. It's actually courage that is the turning point that then allows you to go into the higher emotions. And I was thinking in particular, when I was thinking about the power to face this morning, that the first place that we need this power is actually to see ourselves. Because a lot of the time people avoid spending time with themselves because it can be, or they're afraid that they will see things that they don't want to see, or they're afraid that they will have to face, some demon within themselves. And it takes a lot of courage to actually really spend time with the self and look at the self with a lot of honesty, which I think was something Sister Fatima had touched on. And the lower self, or the ego, has been very good at protecting us from actually seeing what is really within. And I once heard this analogy, which I really liked, and that is that, say you walk into a dark room and you see something coiled up on the floor and you think it's a snake. And so there's that fear. But the moment you turn the light on, you see it's not a snake, it's actually a rope. And not only can the rope not harm you, but it can also be useful to you. And it's a little bit like that when we start to reflect inwards, that we find that the things inside are not so frightening. In fact, that if we really see what's inside, even the dark places, that can be enormously useful. And so this is what I was thinking about, the power to face, to actually face those things within. Maybe they are regrets that we have from the past, or we've just seen ourselves in a negative light and been harsh on ourselves. But to really look within, even to the places that are painful, because they are like flags along our journey that show us the way to healing, and never to be afraid of them, but to be guided by them, because those painful places will show us also the wonder of what lies within us, the truth of what lies within us.
You know,
I
as you're
think,
talking. Oh, okay. Go ahead,
no,
Sister
carry
Michelle.
on, carry on.
Okay. As you were talking, Sister Belinda, what was coming to my mind about the power to face was as you, especially when you said looking inside yourself, I was having this feeling of an energy that cleanses, that takes away all the darkness out of you and clears the path to allow light to come in. And of course, you said something very, very special, that sometimes we're scared to look inside because we're afraid of the demons that are inside of us. And that's why when you said that, I realized that when you use the power to face, of course, with courage, you're actually cleaning out your house. And when you clean something out, when you clean yourself out, you feel lighter because you also allow light to come in.
I want to just maybe take this on a little bit of a different level, because I know it was said earlier that, when you look inside, you see the weaknesses. But actually, if we really saw inside, there isn't weaknesses, because the intrinsic self is actually very pure, very powerful. But if we reflect on who we are and what we're doing, and it's that reflection that shows us that we're not living our truth. And so actually looking inside will never be a frightening thing, because you will only see what is good, but what people will eventually maybe hesitate from, because when you understand how powerful you are, you can't make excuses to actually be the limited self you've made yourself to be. And so that's actually where the fear comes, not looking inside. It's because looking inside then creates a reflection for you to realize that what you've been doing actually is not. Because see, if we don't look inside and we just carry on, we'll think that this is what I'm doing is absolutely right. I got nothing to compare with. But when I start looking inside, I realize, no, there's a part of me that actually isn't like this, that actually I'm not being true to my real self. And that's actually what needs power to face. So, sorry, Sister Belinda, I'm not trying to change the meaning of it, but just to kind of put it forward that looking inside will never be a difficult thing. Looking inside just creates a mirror that allows us to compare what we're doing on the outside. And then that contrast is actually what creates hesitation. Because, what happens with human beings, besides everything else, we've also acquired one other weakness, which is laziness. And so what happens is that we like things the way are. We like to keep it hush hush, because then we don't have to do anything. And so it's like, if we have to clean up, we have to pick up, we have to move furniture. And it's a lot of work. Cleaning up is not just dusting on the surfaces. It's actually called movement and motion. And so inside of ourselves, it means when we really recognize who we are, our life cannot continue the way it's continuing. We will make some major changes, but people are in a comfort zone. And so I find that for me, even if I really want something to happen differently, I must say to myself, am I ready to let go of whatever I have at the moment? Then only I can really say I have courage. Because if I want to sit on my position and say, right, this is where I am, but this is not good, that is not good, and this should happen, that's easy. That's like people having opinions. But to actually stand up, roll your sleeves and go for it, I think that's really where it comes in. But laziness is unfortunately something we don't look at as a vice. I just quickly will say something that I thought was useful. When I went to Cancun, we went to a place called Maya Land, where we have the Mayan calendar. And the Mayan calendar is actually a pyramid which has 7 steps. And actually, as we ascend this steps in terms of consciousness, it tells us what time of humanity we're in. And the beginning of that calendar is actually the first thing, and they call it sloth. So to get to the point of self-realization, which is the pinnacle of where we need to be in terms of our existence, to overcome it, we need to overcome the first thing, which is called laziness. And so it takes courage to get out of your comfort zone.
I agree.
So we're gonna start moving it.
But you know, as Sister Belinda was talking earlier and you were talking now, again, what comes to my mind again is that we go back to something that we discussed, I think 2 days ago. The power to, what was the power we discussed 2 days ago?
We did the power to discern. We did 2 days ago. Discern. Yesterday was power to judge. Yeah.
Yes. The power to discern. I always want to go to the word discriminate. I couldn't say discriminate.
It might be politically incorrect to use that word, right?
Yeah, I always feel like that about it. But anyway, as you and Sister Belinda actually unpacked it when she was talking, and I realized that once more, when we come into the power to face and we bring in courage, you also need to discern. And you've said that, you've unpacked it, but it's just like when I was sitting there, I was hearing that you need to bring in discernment.
But you're absolutely right. These powers are not isolated, they kind of all work together in a sense. And we're just bringing in highlight from one angle. But yes, they all have where they enhance each other. They're also opposite to each other. And it's very beautiful, actually, when you look at that they actually like really support each other. And so to be whole, it's almost like to work with the whole bouquet of virtues, powers.
I'm still on the topic of courage here. I think courage is required when there's fear. And because courage overcomes fear. And we know that fear takes on so many different shades of gray. It can be extremely subtle, or it can be something very obvious, like physical, fear of something physical. But I think there are many things about ourselves that we do fear. We fear our own maybe unworthiness, and that we're not enough, things like that creates fear within us. And so when we bring that power to face, or that courage, if you like to see it like that, and as Sister Usha said, the courage is the first step, but it is that step that brings light. And when there's light, then you see, I like the acronym for fear, false evidence appearing real. Like the snake in the dark, it appears like a snake, but actually it's a rope. And fear is like that, you know. And then when you shine the light of consciousness with that courage, then it's absolutely amazing that what you actually see is that the things, even the scary things, actually are useful to you and can help you. And as Sister Usha said, what you really discover is that there is a diamond there. And that diamond is very, very beautiful. But it does take courage because we're so full of misunderstandings, misperceptions of things. And so that step of courage to have the power to face. And then it's very important to take that first step, because when you face the things within yourself, then the external becomes much easier, because you're starting to trust. You're starting to trust who you are, that you are worthy, you are an extraordinary being. And then you go out into the world and you're able to face then difficulties in relationships, in so many challenges in our world today that also require courage. But that first step of courage to really clear out the misunderstandings.
So who's leading us into meditation today?
Sister Belinda.
We're sounding like a choir, Sister Fatima.
Everyone?
I say we're sounding like a choir.
Really? I think that's one.
Okay, so as always, we sit back and we begin our meditation by just checking that we are fully present. We may have a busy day ahead, but let's make the most of these moments as we turn inwards and we have the courage to go into our inner world, which for many of us has been an unknown territory. But when we turn within, it's as if we wake up or we switch on the light. And we see the real self, the soul, the spirit. This is the first aspect of truth. The inner being, the true identity. So different from our physical identity. This is the eternal self that exists beyond time and space. We see the soul in its form of light, like a beautiful star. And we see that form in a golden dimension of light. It is here that we are home. In this non-physical dimension, everything is true. Everything is eternal. The soul, so powerful and yet innocent, like a child. When we hold this inner truth and we look back at the fears and insecurities, the doubts, and the anxiety that we sometimes have about ourselves, we realize that it really is false evidence appearing real. And what is true is extremely beautiful, more powerful than any of the imagined fears or doubts that come into our heart and our mind. So as we continue our day today, let us hold that image of truth so that the light dissolves all darkness. No matter how many Goliaths we have to face, we have whatever we need to overcome, because we are peaceful, powerful, loving, divine, immortal beings of light. Om Shanti.
So today, as we explore and practice the power to face, when I have the insight to trust myself to complete an assignment, even if I do not have the skills and resources to accomplish it, this is courage. It is the power that comes when I finish all dependencies. I am fearless. I am resilient. I am courageous. So have a beautiful day and enjoy the opportunity to go inward and see the self for the truth that I am, and all the other things, when you put the light of your truth on it, will actually be nothing. Om Shanti.
Thank you.